What's up, everybody? Austin Schrock here, and
that's me, and that is the face of a very nervous and very uncomfortable 17-year-old. Also, that hairstyle didn't help me much back then. So why didn't I quit? Why am I still here making videos that maybe, 100 people will see? Honestly, I think I can boil that down to a pretty simple practice. That is, I became comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, I'm not the best at withstanding discomfort. I do try though, and when we do something hard or when we do something that scares us, it challenges our framework of reality, as it were. Because we begin to realize that we can survive beyond that edge, and the next edge, and the next, and the next. It's kind of like when you meet someone for the first time and you form an impression about them, and then you later realize that your impression was totally wrong. So when that happens, your reality gets rocked a little bit, and it makes you a little bit more pliable and open-minded next time you meet someone for the first time. Here's the thing though, I'm really terrible at some things. I know, shocker. But have you seen my earlier videos? They were horrible. Well, obviously you haven't seen them because I've taken them down, so you can't see them. But being really terrible at things makes us uncomfortable because it causes us to have fear, imposter syndrome, anxiety, social anxiety especially. And if this goes on long enough, then what will end up happening is, well, especially if our tolerance for discomfort is very low, the idea of quitting will seem more manageable than withstanding the discomfort that we're going through. And sometimes the most amazing things lie just beyond where our largest amount of discomfort is, or what scares us the most. And sometimes I wonder if we don't quit right before some of the most amazing moments of our lives. Let me actually give you an example here.
what's up? How's it going?
Not much. I was just working on some Mind Castle scripts.
Nice. Podcast
actually,
link below. For those of you who don't know, this is my brother Reagan, certified skydiver, kind of used to being uncomfortable because skydiving is kind of uncomfortable. So we're gonna hear what he has to say about all this. Hold on.
Okay. So what do you need me to say? I need to back up.
So yes, we're talking. Hold on. So we're talking about learning to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, and how if you don't do that, then most of the time you quit and don't follow through on stuff. Where should I be?
So should I talk to the camera or talk to you?
I'd probably talk to the camera. I'll just hang out over here.
Okay. So when it comes to you're on frame, Yeah, when it comes to skydiving, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And there is, as one of my instructors said, there's literally nothing about it that's natural. Everything about it is not normal. So there's fear, there's reservations, there's what should I do if things don't go as planned? Why am I doing this is another really big one. And all those are theoretical. But then when you go up that first time and you get to the edge and they put you right up on the edge of the door and you're with the instructors and you're not strapped to anybody, it's your first jump. And you look down and you're looking down at 14,000 feet of nothing but death, and you're just I'm going to step out of this airplane and I'm going to fall. And our brains say, yeah, but you can't do that. Even as much intellectually as we know that you're going to be fine, probably, it's like a lockdown. And the only way I've figured out to make that work, actually, is you just have to keep pushing through it. It's going to happen. It happens to me all the time in life. And you get to that spot and you're like, okay, I have to push through. Okay, I have to push through. And eventually you get used to it in the sense that when it's happening, you're like, no, I've been here before. I know how this works. I can get through to the other side. And once you actually step out of the plane and you're in free fall, you're flying, and everything's good, and your gear is working great, and you know what to do because you've been trained well, you're like, why was I afraid? That doesn't even make sense. There was really nothing. The crazy thing is you're more afraid at the moment before you step out of the plane than you are when you actually step out of the plane. So the point where you're perfectly safe in a perfectly fine airplane, you're more afraid than when you actually get out of the airplane, the thing you're afraid of, and are actually in the quote-unquote danger zone, you actually aren't afraid anymore. And it just showed me, I was like, this is my brain playing tricks on me, and I need to learn how to control this better. So for me, skydiving has been one of the best things for mindset development I think that I've ever done. Just like that pushing through.
Cool. Well,
there's one other thing.
What?
So when you're doing something uncomfortable,
yeah,
there's this concept that when you're feeling fear and the heart rate's getting up and you're like, oh boy, I'm afraid. Just tell yourself, I'm supposed to feel that way. Like I'm supposed to, because the situation I'm in, that's good, that's natural, that's normal. I belong here. This is how I'm supposed to be feeling. When I started telling myself that, it changed the game completely. So every time now you're getting up in the plane and it's going higher and higher and higher, circling up to altitude, and you're about to jump out and you're like, oh boy, even though I've done it a number of times, and I should know how this all works, you still feel that. And I just tell myself, yeah, I belong here. I'm supposed to feel that way. It's all good. Like that's good. That's normal. Yeah, no, it totally works. Try that. Anytime when you're facing something that's like very uncomfortable, I mean, unless it's like genuinely dangerous, right. then get out of the situation.
There's a bear running at me. I'm supposed to. Totally fine.
but when it's anytime you try something new, honestly, like first time I drove a car, I'm supposed to feel that way. That's good, and you push through to the other side, and you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm good. If I can stick to it, and that's the other thing with what makes the best skydivers out there are the ones that aren't necessarily very good at it, but they show up every week. And they practice and they practice and they practice until they get good. The main instructor there, he was a terrible student. Like he couldn't get it. It took him forever to figure out how to be a skydiver. And then once he got it, he was good. And he's like one of the best out there. He's a world-class jumper now. But there's other instructors there. They're like, hey, we know everything. And then you start hearing the stories that go around behind their backs of like all the mistakes they've made. And you're like, they're not good at all, So it's the guy who shows up and pushes through, even though he knows I'm not really that good at this. He's just going to show up and stick with it, even though it's very uncomfortable. And says, no, I belong here. I'm going to stay here until I get it.
Nice.
Anyway,
cool.
That was...
Thanks
for... Is that helpful?
Yeah, super helpful. Thanks. Back to the studio.
All right.
Navy SEALs have this saying that... Okay, well, Navy SEALs have a lot of sayings. but one of them is, learn to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so when Navy SEALs say this, they're not only referring to the extreme physical turmoil, torture, whatever you want to call it, that they go through. It's also, situations and stresses and mental endurance, as it were. For example, some of their very rigorous training is something called surf torture. This process involves everybody linking arms and laying in the frigid ocean until the body reaches early stages of hypothermia, to teach them to stay focused on what the end goal is and focused on the task at hand. Now, there's a difference between, taking a cold shower and running a marathon barefoot through the frozen tundra. One will kill you and the other one will probably actually kind of be good for you. Actually, it will be good for you. So, we don't want to take this too far to extremes that ends up long-term damage and hurting ourselves. So here's the thing, life will make you uncomfortable. It's just kind of the way life goes, in case you haven't noticed. When we feel uncomfortable, it's good to remember that most times that's actually a good thing, because that's a sign that we are moving forward and that we're exploring new territory. Now, obviously, again, you don't want to take this too crazy and say that, pain is weakness leaving the body, that whole thing, it's not always this way, but in the majority of our lives, we're not, being threatened by saber-toothed tigers anymore. So when something makes us uncomfortable, it's probably just a little bit of our enjoyment being taken away. And sometimes that's good, because it forces us to think better or think wider or explore new options that we hadn't thought of before. I also find it interesting that goals are basically this. You're trying to get from A to B, and you're trying to determine whether or not it's worth going through the discomfort of that duration to get to B. So it's up to you how you want to start doing this, but in my opinion, there are kind of two approaches. The first one is to, gently lower yourself into discomfort little by little until you kind of gradually acclimate to it. Kind of like when you're taking a nice spicy hot shower, and at the end you slowly turn the dial back down cold and, kind of get used to it as you go. The other method is to bring about massive, enormous amounts of change. And, for example, turn the water all the way to cold right from the beginning, jump in like full caveman style, that whole thing. Both of these options are valid in my opinion, and depending on where you're at with all of this, you may need, a gentle push in the right direction or like a massive shove to get you going. Either way, I would say start small. For example, when I was learning how to vlog in public, it's weird. You're walking through a crowded city talking to your camera. Like, who's not gonna look at you and think you're a weirdo? So when I was getting used to doing this and trying to figure out how to get comfortable with that and face that discomfort, I didn't just like launch myself into it and just like, just force myself to do it. I took it in steps. I gradually, I'd go out and do a park where there weren't many people around, and then I would go into the city where, back streets where there weren't very many people, and then, gradually working my way up to it. That way it was more manageable, and the growth was a little bit more, more gradual, I guess. And so for something like that, I don't think it would have worked for me to force myself into it and like go all in. This again depends on your situation and where you're at with all this, but I was so new in this whole like breaking through this discomfort that I'm pretty sure that would have made me close down even more. I think it would have been so embarrassing for me that I literally would have just been like, that's it. Nope, not gonna do that. But I had to keep remembering that when I'm working on this whole discomfort thing, the only competitor is myself. So I don't need to measure myself based on other people or what they're doing. It's good to have role models. It's good to look at someone else and say, wow, they're at this level of being able to manage their discomfort or do hard things. I want to get there. I want to get to that point. That's okay. But it's not okay to look at someone and be like, oh, they're there and I'm here. I suck. I'm terrible at this because they're so much better than me. Because if you're doing that, then you're looking at the wrong motivation and the wrong person for comparison. And believe me when I say this, it's much better to go forward slowly than it is to go backwards. And the reason why I say that is because if you don't keep pushing yourself, your comfort zone will slowly shrink in around you, and it'll push you in, and it'll push out experiences that make you even slightly uncomfortable. And so if we don't challenge that, then our reality and our fabric of life will slowly close in around us and get smaller and smaller and smaller until it's eventually kind of suffocating us, and even just like small things of stepping outside of that just seem overwhelming to us. And so when we have a smaller tolerance for doing hard things, when we begin something new, then we're gonna have much more likelihood of just quitting after a while, because we haven't built up the endurance to do uncomfortable things for a period of time. For example, I was at the chiropractor the other day, and so I've got a vertebrae that's slightly out of place in my lower back. And so he's like, all right, fun fact, you're gonna have to do like a lot of core exercises and strengthen your core pretty much for the rest of your life. Otherwise, this thing is gonna just hurt you like crazy. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So I was like, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, I have to do these really annoying and dumb and frustrating exercises that make me really uncomfortable and I don't like them. But I feel like I have a much higher tolerance and higher ability to be able to do that because for the last, 6-8 months, I've been taking cold showers every day. So that's a constant daily pushing out against the fabric of what is comfortable and what's uncomfortable. And so because I've been doing that, I think it's helping me in other areas like this. And we all approach discomfort a little bit differently. For myself, I like to simply test the waters and see if my perception of what I think will happen is actually accurate. For example, one time, not too long ago, I was asked to give a presentation in front of a group of people at very short notice. And by short notice, I mean like 15 minutes short notice. And so instantly all these things started popping up in my head of how I was gonna fall flat on my face and it was just gonna be a terrible disaster and everyone was gonna think I was, stupid and all this stuff. And then I was like, okay, cool. Thank you, brain, for my fear sensors that enacted and gave me a great show of what could happen. And I was like, all right, that's interesting. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take 5 minutes and I'm gonna just work on writing out stuff that I want to cover and how I think I could do this. And it's like, that was a little bit scary because it's like, here's a third of my time. But when I did that, I started actually getting kind of excited about it. And I started realizing that once I started actually doing the process, once I actually just sat down and began, all those perceptions of things started to fade away because they were worst case scenarios and they weren't actually that accurate. And it reminded me that my imagination had gotten the better of me yet again, where I was fully capable of doing this. And I was very excited to do it once I sat down and began the work and began digging into like, okay, what can I share? What can I talk about? Oh, I could pull this in. And then my creative mindset and everything could take over and it was so much fun then. But if I hadn't begun and stepped into it just a little bit, just enough to taste it, I don't think any of that would have happened. I would have ended up procrastinating until right up to the time and cramming and then it would have gone terribly. But this way, I think it went good. Aside from the fact that I wrote all of my notes on my hand and then I was holding the mic in this hand, so I was like trying to read my notes, and that was kind of a disaster. Anyway, like I mentioned earlier in the video, I've started taking cold showers as a way of trying to push back on that comfort level. So if you're curious what my thought process is of how I got myself to do something wildly uncomfortable like that, then I'd encourage you to check out the video in the dead center of this screen that will give you kind of a backstory to all of that and what I've learned from that.